What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 808. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, how was lunch, man? I got a photo in my to me and Jeff, and that thing looked good.
Yeah. We went to like a juicy seafood place with me and Gabby and my in-laws, and we always go when they come because it's like kind of an elaborate thing. Like you get like crab and shrimp and clams all in this like Cajun seafood, like kind of like sauce, and they put it on a platter, but like it's in like a bag. They like shake the bag, and it's got garlic and butter.
Whoa, how would you describe the bag?
It was a spicy bag. Some might even say a spice bag.
Whoa, that's an elevated spice bag, though. I think,
True.
You know, rather than like more on the fast food side. Yeah, that looked fantastic. We've got Final Fantasy format overview today. So we've had the set now for about a week, and we're done with the set reviews, and that means it is time for us to dive in and tell you about what we found with the format, our initial impressions of it, the things that we have learned, and the state of it as it stands, so that if you're in the trenches, playing, or if you're just looking to dive in, you'll have an idea for what's going on in the format. That's what we're going to talk about on the show today. Before we do, I want to say thank you to everybody who supports us on Patreon. It's patreon.com/limitedresources. And it's the best way to support the show directly. Thank you to everybody who supports us over there. Also, Ultimate Guard, the place to get the best stuff in the business. Over at Ultimate Guard, they have that really nice combination of really well designed and really great materials. And that is something that you don't always see. Sometimes you see a good design, but they cheap out and don't use the good stuff. Or sometimes people use good stuff, but it doesn't look good. It doesn't function well. Ultimate Guard does a great job of melding those two together, and you'll see it any of their products. Try it. Try their sleeves, try their deck boxes, try their binders, try their backpacks, and you're going to go, dang, this is nice. And it really is. They make the best stuff in the business. If you need to protect your cards, your decks, and your collection, you should head over to ultimateguard.com, and you can check out their full line of stuff. And then if you want to pick something up, you can go to your favorite online retailer or your favorite local game store. Thank you, Ultimate Guard. We do appreciate it. One of the things you get for being a Patreon supporter of the show is you get access to the threads that we put up for like our Q&A episodes that we do once per cycle. If we have a guest on, we'll put up questions for the guest, and also our ongoing Patreon question of the week thread. And this one comes from Sam, who says, "Hey, Marshall and Luis, my question is, how do you or did you slow yourself down? I feel like I always play fast and loose. I tell myself to slow down, but when I play, I feel like I have tunnel vision." Kind of funny especially asking you this, right, Luis?
Well,
I guess it begs the question, was there ever a point where you did do that?
Look, there are definitely times when I really am able to slow down and kind of consider things a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the time, it's actually hard to play too much slower than your normal cadence of play. There is that actually can be a drawback. So it's definitely, I'm not saying you can't do it, but I haven't always done great doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for me, I would say that's probably my biggest weakness at this point is autopiloting or playing too quickly. I definitely have the ability to slow myself down, but a lot of the times I choose not to because I'm playing,
Look, when you're just jamming on arena,
not for stakes, yeah,
you don't need to go in the tank, and it's totally fine to get into that flow state and you're just kind of playing cards, and that's totally great.
Yeah.
But if it's something you really care about, it's worth double checking and triple checking. The thing is, you can't do that with every play. So it's not you're I really want to win this PTQ, so every play I'm going to make in this 10-round tournament, I'm going to be super dialed in. Most people can't really do that, and I mean, a lot of the strategies of how I approach things kind of take that into account, which is I try to automate as much as I can, so I'm not sitting there thinking all the time, mm-hmm. so that when I do need to think, I have kind of the mental bandwidth to do so.
Yeah, that's how I do it too. The first few turns of the game, when you've played enough, can kind of be in that flow state type of thing. And then you will, though, get to the point. Basically, what you want to try to do is develop having a switch that you can flip where you say, I play at my normal pace, whatever that is. But when a key inflection point in a game comes up, I'm able to say, I'm going to recognize that there's a little voice in the back of my head that says this turn's really important. Like this could be a turning point in this game. And I need to really make sure that I don't just continue on the same path. Because, the mistake that you see the most for people that struggle with this is that the early part of the game plays out in a way where, let's say, one person is the aggressor and the other one is trying to defend a little bit more. And the aggressor never realizes that they are no longer the aggressor, and they keep trying to push because they decided on turn 2 or turn 3, or maybe even before the game started when they looked at their opening hand, that they have a great curve out hand and they're going to run over their opponent, and they haven't actually taken the moment to say, that didn't actually happen. Like, I did get a good start. My opponent's at 10 and they didn't do much in the first 3 turns of the game. But then they played a 3/4 blocker and a removal spell, and my attacks are actually pretty sketchy at this point. I don't have a clear way to push through this last 10 damage. That's the point where if you're playing fast and loose, you're like, all right, attack with everything, pump spell. And they're like, okay, block. And you're like, cool, I got you to 6, but I lost 2 creatures in that exchange. And all of a sudden, that's the game. Like, you just lost, because you didn't stop to slow yourself down. So try to look for that, I think, Sam. Try to say, I can play quickly when it's just normal turns playing out, but at what point and how do you develop that ability to say that this feels important and I'm going to actually slow down and take my time? It's an interesting question because I do think that that's a really common problem. And Luis, you're like the worst person to ask it to, because you do slow yourself down when you need to, but you just play so fast so often, but at such a high level that it's like, why would you slow down? Like, let's just keep going.
I will say when I'm not in really dialed in, which I kind of vary on a day-to-day basis here, where I am playing a lot of Magic and that part's great. And I'm really I feel like I really am very much know what's going on in Cube. I also am just operating on less sleep than I normally would like to. So
for sure.
I'm missing some big things too. So it can be tricky.
Yeah. And I mean, this is not about Sam's question as much, but it is interesting. I've seen you play in basically all of the different levels and stages and all that stuff. And, when you're doing a video, you are entertaining and talking as well. So there's a little bit of bandwidth that goes to that. And I think it's funny because people are always surprised when they play against you, like at the PT, and you don't say much, your business. No. And I think that they're expecting you to be joking around and making comments and stuff. And I'm like, no, that's not who you just sat across from. Like, he's a really nice guy, but you do not want to sit across from him in a game of Magic. Like, it's not gonna end well for you. You're a stone cold killer when it comes to, high level Magic events, and somehow you can just turn that off once you're, not, but. Okay, so let's do a couple of cracker packs, Luis. That'll, get the blood flowing here as far as this format. And then we'll we'll talk about a few of the archetypes that have stood out to us and some of the big picture things that we've learned as well. So our first cracker pack comes out. We've got a foil. It is Scorpion Sentinel. That is the 1 and a blue 1/4 artifact creature. And as long as you have 7 or more lands, it gets +3/+0 until end of turn, or just gets +3/+0. I mean.
It's a totally fine card. I find it works nicely as an artifact, as a way to get to, the late game in like a slower deck, and a kind of a payoff, a way to kill them. So I've played this in towns, in blue-red, in blue-white. Like, it's not a card I want to first pick, but it's a totally fine card. It is.
It's kind of the classic crossover card. It hits basically all of the blue archetypes, but it's not great in any of them. It's just kind of there, and that's fine. That's a good spot for a common to be at. Next is Windhurst Federation Center. By the way, I refuse to remember the names of all these towns. I'm just going to call these the Green-White Town, which is what it is. We'll talk about the towns deck when we get to the main part, but I don't think we're going to be first picking this in any case, especially not this particular town with green and white. Next, card that's been performing quite well. It's Cornered by Black Mages. That's the 1 black sorcery. Target opponent sacrifices a creature of their choice, and you get an 0/1 wizard that pings them when you cast a non-creature. Card's been good.
Good. It's a little committal because it's double black early, and you also kind of want to be in that deck. Or not necessarily you have to be black-red, but you want to be in a deck that can take advantage of this well, which, I typically don't play this in black-green, for example. Black-green pretty heavily wants all its cards to be permanents for the variety of synergies that it's got going on. So I would ideally not want to start by taking corner by black mages, but it is a good card if you end up in a deck that can play it.
Yeah, we speculated in the set review that the O1 mages were worth, half a card, 3/4 of a card, somewhere in that range, and they have been. And like you said, though, if they're supported, they're even better.
They also get really gnarly multiples. Once you have like 3 and play, you win pretty quickly.
They're so annoying. Next is Magic Damper. This is the blue instant target creature. You control gets +1/+1 and gains hexproof until entered. Untap it. I have yet to play with or against the Damper.
Yeah, it's not a card I think you typically want to put in your deck.
Did you have any dessert when you were out at lunch, Luis? Did you have a nice ice flan to finish off?
A delicious ice flan.
Yeah. This is the 4/blue 5/4 when 8 ETBs. You tap an artifact, a creature an opponent controls, put a stun counter on it, but it also has island cycling for 2. It's been fine. I think that these are
nothing exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
I do think that the land cyclers are fairly pushed these days.
Mm-hmm. I mean, these are legit cards for sure, but they're still not like none of the land cyclers like crack into the top commons where you're just like, oh, you got to have it, but they're definitely playable. And this one's definitely on my list. Anything that's adjacent to the ramp stuff I like too, and blue is the blue-green deck has a lot of ramp available. So a 6-drop like Ice Flan that helps you stabilize is pretty nice. Next is Vincent's Limit Break. Remember when you made me tell you what I thought this did? And then I've had this conversation like twice since then where people just didn't know what the card did. And I'm like, yeah, I also failed that test. It's the 1 in a black instant. And it's got tiered. It says until end of turn, target creature you control gains, quote, when this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control, and has the chosen base power and toughness. And the ones are you can pay 0 extra for 3/2, 1 extra mana for 5/2, or 3 extra mana for 7/2.
Great card. It can do some cool stuff. And the big thing we kind of missed on in the set review is that I guess the joke is you put this on your saga because you know it's going to die and it'll come back. Mm-hmm. But it's still not a card I've found a huge reason to play.
Me neither. I am low on it. I think I've played against it more than I thought I would, but I'm not a big fan. Next solid card, Suplex. That's the 1 in a red sorcery. Choose one, does 3 damage to a creature. And if the creature dies, you exile it, or you could just straight up exile an artifact. And both of those come up often.
Yeah, Suplex is great. It's a 2-mana removal spell. It's extremely cheap. Like it really does everything you want here.
Yeah, the only thing holding it back from being like top tier common in red, it is on the short list, but is that it doesn't have the ability to cost 4, where like, the blue-red deck really does like that. Next is Cloudbound Moogle. This is the white, the plane cycler. So it's a 3 white, 2/3 flyer, and when it enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. I have actually not played Cloudbound Moogle. Are you a fan of it? Does it? I feel like it doesn't fit into the white decks that I've drafted very well.
Pretty low power level. That's the main reason.
Okay.
I think that you don't want to play. The land cyclers are good except for the Cloudbound Moogle. The Moogle I don't think is particularly great.
Poor Moogle. Next is Commune with Beavers. This is the green sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You can reveal an artifact, creature, or land from among them and put it in your hand. The rest go on the bottom in any order.
I don't mind playing this card, but it's not like a huge priority for me to put this card in my deck. It's kind of like if you have a base green deck with a lot of creatures and you have a slot for like another card, then like sure, yeah, this card can be fine. But
yeah, I've played it here and there as a filler card, and it played like a filler card. I've never missed with it. It's actually difficult to miss unless you put it in the wrong deck or something. But it does feel like filler when you play it. Like it doesn't put the cards in the yard, right? It doesn't like do anything other than just replace itself with one of those card types. Last common is Rook Turret. This is the 3 in a blue 3/3 flyer, and it's an artifact creature. And whenever another artifact enters under your control, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card.
I mean, a playable artifact card. It can give you a little bit more gas. It's a decent flyer. Gets suplexed right out. It's okay. It's not a card I would really consider. I mean, right now I think I'm pretty firmly in the suplex camp. I don't really see a justification for anything else here.
Yeah, suplex and cornered by black mages are the only 2 cards that stand out, and I'm with you. Suplex much less committal. Uncommons. First one is Circle of Power. This is the 3 and a black sorcery. And it says you draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. You get a wizard, and wizards you control get +1/+0 and lifelink until end of turn as well.
Really cool card. Obviously very good in the black-red deck, but also just like a fine like kind of Grixis card. Just a card draw spell, leaves a little material on the board. Like, can maybe gain you some life if you've got it set up. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, and the loss of 2 life is usually offset even just by having the wizard as a chump blocker to block anything with 2 power or above. So that part works. This set it has a lot of card draw in it. So cards like Circle of Power go down a little bit just because even if you are a deck that's interested in card draw, you usually will be able to find it. So you don't need to like super prioritize it. But this is one that checks that box. Next is Lionheart. This is the 4 mana equipment with equip creature gets +2/+1. And when it enters, it does 2 damage to any target. I've been playing this a fair bit. It's not like, mythic uncommon or anything like that, but it does the thing. Like it kills stuff. You can hit your opponent with it. And the equipment it leaves behind is actually decent. Like anytime you get to take out something on the other side, the equipment's actually okay. +2/+1 is kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah. The card is okay. I haven't really wanted to play this a ton, but I've had people play it against me plenty, and I do think it is a fine card.
It's okay. Yeah. Have you played much Random Encounter, the 4 red sorcery? Shuffle your library, then mill 4 cards. Put each creature card milled this way onto the battlefield. They gain haste at the beginning of the next end step. Return those creatures to their owner's hands, and you can flash it back for 6 red.
So it's kind of funny where I did not like in our set review, we talked about like, okay, yeah, this card's not very good. This, like Random Encounter, like just too expensive. It's too situational, all that stuff. But my first day, I then drafted a double Random Encounter kind of like red-green deck with like 16 creatures, including some big ones. And it ended up being pretty good. It was just a lot of gas. It would just hit like funny. 2 creatures. You get to hit with them, then they get to come back to your hand. You get to recast them. It mills. You have like another Random Encounter in your graveyard afterwards. Like I actually kind of run into the fear of getting decked with town greeters, but it's a pretty situational card. I would never take it even on the first go round. Like you can just wheel the card. No one else is going to want it. But I think there is something to this. I'm not exactly sure what, but I feel like Random Encounter at least is a powerful card. So still not a card I would commit to very early.
There was a deck that I was drafting that I thought I actually had 2 Random Encounters that I got very late, and I started to nudge the build in that direction. Some bigger stuff, some, get stuff in the yard, whatever. I thought, maybe this could be a thing, but I chickened out, and I didn't play either of them. I ended up in just different color pair. Last card is our rare. It is Sarah Farron. Which is the 1 green-white legendary 2/2, and the first legendary creature spell you cast each turn costs 2 less to cast, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 2 or more other legendary creatures, you can transform Sarah Farron. And let me figure out what she does. Do you remember what she does on the other side?
She's an enchantment that makes your first legend, or maybe all of them, cost 2 less, and your legendary creatures up +2/+2.
Oh, so yeah, that's right. Sorry. Yeah, the +2/+2. I do remember that now. Where are you at on Sarah?
I mean, surprisingly good at actually like being able to flip this thing, but still not a card that I'm really that excited about. I just don't think this is going to work all that often.
Yeah, it's weird because there are definitely enough legendary creatures in the set to support a card like this, but it's kind of like, is this the payoff that I really want? It also doesn't have like a clear home outside of just being in green-white because it's green-white, and it's not really great either. So did any of these uncommons or rares take you off of Suplex? No, right?
Oh, no. I think Suplex is the card to take here. It's also pretty flexible. It's not the best in Towns because my experience Towns hasn't wanted to be red for anything but like good rares mostly. But it's great in blue-red. It's even better in Grixis. It's fine in black-red too, and it's fine in red-white. Like it's good in all the red color combinations. So there's not really much I can say about it, but any bad I can say about it. It's not the most powerful card. It's below average for a first pick. I would hope to not be first picking Suplexes, but it does actually, do kind of what you want it to do.
Does do the thing. All right, let's do another Crack-A-Pack here. First card up is a foil Retrieve the Esper. That's the 3 and a blue sorcery. You make a 3/3 artifact creature token, and it has flashback for 5 and a blue. And if you do cast it from your graveyard, the token gets 2+1/+1 counters as well.
This is a very solid card for the blue-red deck, and I don't really want to play it outside of that, including the blue-white deck.
Yeah, like, even though it happens to be an artifact.
You basically, like, this card is not good enough on its own. A 4-mana 3/3 that flashes back for a 6-mana 5/5, like, I just hate to say it, that's just not where we're at these days. But if you can trigger your blue-red stuff and get value that way, then yes, it totally becomes good enough.
Yeah, because, you know, one of the things that the blue-red deck, and we'll talk about it, has to solve is getting enough bodies, right? You want to play all these spells that cost 4 or more, but you want them to be creatures. And it turns out in this set, that's actually easy. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do it, and this is one of them. I see we have a land here that's wastes. Is that in the set? I never actually figured out, and I haven't seen one.
I think so, but I guess I don't know 100%.
Yeah, because we're using the, anyway, whatever. The next card is the Imperial City of Arcades, otherwise known as Wall of Omens. 1 and a white for a 0/4 wall with Defender, and when it ETBs, you draw a card.
It's a great card. I mean, I'm happy to play Wall of Omens. Yeah. I don't know that it's not the best in every white deck, but there's plenty of white decks that will be happy to play it. And it's a good enough card. You should just put this card in your deck.
You'll find some use for it.
Yeah, you're not really losing much by doing so. So,
no. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Wall of Omens. Next is Gubu Gardener. This is the 1 and a green 1/3 plant beast that taps for green.
It's a great card for the ramp decks. I'm very happy playing the Gardener. Like it's at its best in black green specifically because black green tends to have a little bit more that it can use kind of the bodies for. Like it's got, you know, the make a token for every creature in your graveyard, that sort of thing. But I think that overall, like the Gardener is a good high pick just because you want to be able to be playing stuff early. And this kind of ramps you right past the spot where you need to be. So
yeah, it does. And, you know, a 1/3 has proven to be a pretty good body. You know, at the 2-drop slot, there's a couple of 1/3s like this, and they just dodge enough of the 1 and 2 mana removal, you know, untiered removal to survive, and they can block okay. So yeah, Gubu Gardener's pretty good. Next is Red Mage's Rapier. This is 1 and a red for an artifact equipment. It has job select, equip 3, and the creature has, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn, and it also happens to be a wizard.
It's an okay card. It's nothing too special. Like it's, I think, a good support piece in something like the red-black deck that's going to have a lot of spells. I have not wanted this in blue-red. Mm-hmm. Like no. Blue-red wants it. Blue-red. We're going to talk more about blue-red, but blue-red wants removal spells, card draw, spells that cost 4, which obviously is part of those two categories, and things that pay you off like Sahagins and the Emperor of Palamecia. It just doesn't want random creatures like this.
Right. And obviously red-white is interested in this card too. Next is Aerith Rescue Mission. This is the 3 and a red sorcery. Choose 1. You can create 3 1/1 hero tokens, or you can tap up to 3 target creatures and put a stun counter on one of them. I have not played the Rescue Mission yet.
Yeah, I played it some and it's been okay, but it's not particularly great. Like, I feel like if you have this card, you're never like, okay, this is one of my better cards. But it's like, well, I guess I kind of have to use this in order to in order to make it so that my deck functions. And this is a good way to tap down a bunch of attackers. Like, it actually does do that.
Yeah. I've played against it quite a bit. That's what I meant. I'm more like the person who's playing corner by black mages and then they play this. Like that's my role in this format, not the one who's playing the Rescue Mission. Next is Syncopate, blue and an X for an instant counter target spell. Yeah, unless his controller pays X, and if it was countered this way, you exile it. I've been playing Syncopate. I played it pretty aggressively early, but I've backed off on it a little bit. Not all the way. I still will put it in my deck, but I don't have it quite in that upper tier of common. Where are you at on it?
think Syncopate's good. I guess I wouldn't put it in like the upper tier of common, but I have found Syncopate to be good. You do want to have access to Syncopate.
I do. I agree. It for all the reasons we said in the set review, it just scales really well with the game. Like you can counter stuff on turn 2. And if you choose, like there are board states where you're like, I am ahead. I have 7 mana. I have a Syncopate. I am just going to force you to cast something. And if it doesn't matter, it gets through. And if it does, it's going to get syncopated and I'm just going to maintain my lead. And there's not that many counters in Limited that allow you to do that. This one actually does. If you choose, you can just, decide not to cast anything on your turn, maintain your board state, and Syncopate's going to get basically anything relevant.
Exiling is good because there's a lot of flashback and things that care about graveyards.
Yeah, it's good. It is a very good Magic card in general, and it's pretty good in this set too. Next is, there it is, again, cornered by black mages. We talked about that. Last common is Gigantode, which is the 3 and a green 4/4. And as long as you control 7 or more lands, it gets +2/+2. This to me is like the opposite of what we talked about with that card that's kind of good, like good enough in all the different archetypes. Exactly. This just has no home at all.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Gigantode, I feel like is just a card I strive not to play.
Definitely. Like if I have to put this in my deck, I am really sad. It feels like it needs reach, then I would be like, okay, get in here, buddy. You can keep me alive while I ramp or whatever, but it just doesn't do that.
No, it just doesn't do anything. It
does nothing.
I
yes.
Don't think you want this card.
Very bad card. Next is uncommons. Fire Magic, not to be confused with Thunder. This is the red instant. And it has tiered, so you can add 0 mana, so just red to do 1 damage to each creature. You can add 2 mana to do 2 damage to each creature, or 5 mana for a total of 6 to do 3 to each creature. Man, I have had a hard time figuring out where I land on this card. I've had it and not played it. I've played it, had it be really good. I've played it, had it be really bad. Right now, in my mind, it just feels a little overly situational to just be like, great. But man, when it is good, it's nasty.
Oh, I think Fire Magic is awesome.
You just think it's great?
I think it's just a very good early pick. You have to be in the right deck. I don't think that you can just put this into any deck and be like, oh wow, this is going to work out great. But in the right deck, I think that Fire Magic is extremely good. It just is such a good sweeper. And there's no better feeling than you have Fire Magic and they lead on Magitech Infantry. You just know you're gonna let them spend 3 turns using Magitech Infantry, and then you're just gonna plop down a Fire Magic maybe for 1 mana.
So you might play a Fire Magic for 1 mana and they could have put 10 mana. Oh, that's so good. I do like that. Okay, so of the cards we've seen so far, then this would be the no-brainer for you?
Yeah, I like Fire Magic a lot. I like it quite a bit more than any common.
Okay.
I just think Fire Magic, again, you have to draft the right deck for it. Don't put it in your red-white deck, but it's great in red-blue. It's fantastic in Grixis. It's one of the main reasons to draft this super controlling Grixis deck. And it just means that you don't have to sweat the small stuff. You don't have to use removal spells on some of their small, creatures or whatever. And that's a pretty big advantage. Okay.
Yeah, you convinced me. I will recommit to Fire Magic, making sure that I'm in the right archetype. Next is Chocobo Racetrack. That's the 3 green artifact, and it has landfall. You get a 2/2 Chocobo. With landfall, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn. This one we kind of dissed it in the set review because it's a 5 mana card that then requires you to make land drops after. And more or less, that's exactly how it's played out for me. I have tried this twice. I did make some, I was in a ramp deck. It wasn't like I was embarrassed that I played the card, but it felt like I got my second Chocobo and I was like, I did it. I paid 5 mana for, this is not where I want to be. Even if you are a ramp deck, you just tend to use up your ramp cards before you play the racetrack. And then you're just sort of at the mercy of hitting random land drops to make Chocobos. So
yeah, it's just not high enough impact. By the time it comes down, you're just not really getting that much out of it.
Totally.
I have not found it to be worth it. It's a cool card for sure.
It is. Yeah, it has a little bit of something to it. But like you said, even in a great scenario where you're on turn 6 and you play Chocobo Racetrack and then play a land where you're kind of maximizing its immediate impact, that still isn't very good. Next is Freya Crescent. This is the red 1/1 with during your turn it has flying and it taps to add red that you can spend for equipment, spells, or abilities. I have not played Freya Crescent because I haven't played that deck too much. I think I only drafted red white one time so far. But people have been playing it against me pretty consistently, and I'm like, yeah, that card pulls its weight. It's a good target for equipment, and it helps get them on the battlefield. Also, the fact that we have so much job select means that in some ways this thing can play out like a little bit of a Llanowar Elf in the right deck.
I'd say Freya is a secret gold card where you're just not playing it outside of red white.
Yeah. Do you like it?
I think in red white it's quite strong because it wears equipment well and moves equipment easily. So like there's just a lot you can do with it. One of the features about red white that I found is it's an aggro deck. It can kind of curve out, but also it can definitely win long games. I have lost some pretty long games to red white with good control decks where it's like, yeah, you kill their stuff and you kind of stabilize, but they've left two different pieces of equipment behind. And so now every card they play is just like a threat you have to deal with. And then sometimes they're going to play like another piece of equipment that you have to kill that creature. Now there's three pieces of equipment in play. And if they untap and it's like the late game with 10 lands in play, every single one of their creatures from now on is just this like gigantic flyer.
Yeah. Job select is really powerful.
They finally did it. They
did it.
They got there where equipment is good enough. They eventually did bribe us,
Yeah, and also though they didn't overdo it where it's like that's the only deck, right? It's not like red white's right in the thick of it. It's a very solid deck. It's in the top 3, but it's not like you play this format and you're like, oh God, here's that stupid, where you don't even get to play. It just pushes that more towards the mid range, which is I'm here for it. Last uncommon is Titus Blitzball Star. This is a 1 blue white 2/1 legend, and whenever an artifact you control enters, it gets a +1/+1 counter, and whenever it attacks, you can tap a creature an opponent controls. I've played this twice in blue white decks, and I've actually been impressed. It's pretty good. You can, if properly built around, those counters add up pretty quickly, and the attack trigger is actually pretty decent too. I was a little more down on it on the set review, not down like where I didn't like it, but just where I was going, is it a little too late to start getting the counters? Like at what point am I really happy? And then the attack part is, strictly an attack thing. But every time I've played it, I've been like, no, this card's good. It pulled its weight. What do you think about Titus?
Pretty weak. I'm not a big Titus fan.
Because of the attacking stuff or what?
It's just a little bit too small. Like it's, I think that Titus is not a card I would it would not set me in a direction of playing blue white. I think if you're playing blue white and you draft the Titus, you put it in your deck. But it's just, I found it for it being one of your like, okay, here's my uncommon payoff. Here's the good thing I'm going to do. It's just a little bit too easy to kill for that in my experience. It
definitely has that issue. The thing that I found about it though is that I got it late. Like nobody else wants it. Like you can wheel it if you're in this deck. And under those circumstances, I felt fine about playing it. Like it is a little bit fragile, but I don't know, man. There's so many artifacts. It felt like it was picking up a +1/+1 counter like every turn. And I was like, you know what? That's actually decent. One thing that I haven't had happen though that maybe would knock it down a little bit is, it is a weak top deck as well. And I kind of was always had it on turn 3. Our rare, it's a mythic. And it's like a key character or something. It's Sephiroth, Fabled, all caps Soldier, which really bothers me. It's 2 and a black for a 3/3 legend. Again, mythic rare. And when it enters or attacks, you can sacrifice another creature if you do draw a card. And whenever another creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And then if this is it the fourth? Yeah, the 4th time that this has happened. The
4th time this trigger goes on the stack.
Then you can flip it into Sephiroth, 1-winged angel, which is a 5/5 flyer. And when it transforms into this thing, you get an emblem that has that whenever a creature dies, you drain your opponent for 1. And then whenever this thing attacks, you can sacrifice any number of other creatures to draw that many cards. Well,
it's a lot of words.
At least the pick was easy.
Yeah. I mean, Sephiroth is a fantastic card. Like you could set aside the this flips into this unbeatable thing, and it would still be pretty good. So obviously, like when we're looking at this, it's just like, okay, yeah, Sephiroth is just a fantastic card. It's a card that you want to be black-white to maximize it, but I think is just a really good card, kind of regardless.
Yeah, I would take Sephiroth. Interesting to look at the other cards though, because there's kind of we have a wide range here. There's Cornered by Black Mages, Syncopate. There's the Freya Crescent, if that's your thing. There also is the Wall of Omens, the Imperial City of Arcades, which I don't know, maybe somebody wants it. And then there's the one that you really pumped up that you kind of got me turned around on, which is Fire Magic as well. So you're thinking Sephiroth over Fire Magic is kind of your...
Yeah, I don't think it's close. As much as I like Fire Magic, Sephiroth, I would go black-green or black-white primarily. I would try not to avoid blue-black. And even black-red, it's going to be fine. Like, you block with a mage token and drain them for one, is pretty good. Or you're casting Corner by Mages, then sacking the token to draw a card is all pretty decent. But
yeah.
Really, I would just be looking to play a creature-heavy black-white or black-green deck, and maybe you'll flip Sephiroth sometimes, and that'll be great too. But like, even if you don't, like, the card is just really obnoxious to have in play.
Let's talk about big picture stuff for this set. What's been your impressions of the speed of the format?
So it's not a slow format. Like, you do really feel it when you're not getting on the board. And I have certainly felt that. So I do think that you want to be doing stuff, but it's also a format where it feels like there's so much gas that, like, you don't run out of stuff to do either, which really does kind of lean you toward or point you towards making sure you have good early plays. Because if you're gonna have stuff to do throughout the entire game, making sure you have early plays so that you don't run out of life points to do those things is really good.
Yeah. To me, this is a sweet spot for modern era Magic sets. It is fast. It still plays out relatively quickly, but it is not necessarily due to just aggression. It is still about doing what Luis just said, which is like, you have to do things that impact the board or set up later game plays. And I'm fine with that. Like, I don't think formats where you just do nothing for turns and that's okay are necessarily that great anyway. The ones that I've had the issues with are where, you feel like you have no room to do any of the synergy based or mid-range based strategies that the designers come up with for these sets. And this set feels like the opposite. You do need to get the ball rolling, but you can absolutely do so far, all of the mid-range stuff has been viable for me, more or less. So I really
my best deck in the format had like 4 7-drops and an 8-drop. Like,
sweet.
You can definitely do those things. And, Atrox is a fantastic card, a 4-color, 7-mana card. But that also means, like, you shouldn't neglect the early game. And, when I play one of these Grixis decks that has like a bunch of card draw, well, I make sure I have enough, Thunder Magic and Suplex and Fire Magic and Vane's Betrayal and all those things so that I can actually realistically leverage the fact that I do have card draw spells in my deck.
Right. And that means you are doing stuff. It just doesn't necessarily have to mean curving out to kill your opponent. Color wise, wow, I took a look at I wrote an article for Wizards, like a draft primer that's going up. Actually, it might be up today. But anyway, and I wanted to know what was doing well. And I was, really impressed. At least in the early stages, we know that sometimes formats can adjust away from things like this, but usually it starts off out of balance. And then if the format has it in it to adjust, it will correct. And if it starts off relatively balanced, we'll see some shifts. This one was really balanced. The only color pair that was out of whack, either for being too good or for too bad, in this case it was too bad, was red-green Landfall was lagging behind significantly. Yeah. But everything else was within about 3 percentage points from number 1 to number 9. Like, seriously, they were that close. This format, at least thus far, has been balanced based on 17 lands data and also anecdotally. Like, it feels like there's no color pair. I guess maybe red green at this point. Though I'll say that before I read that, I didn't have that strong opinion. I hadn't drafted it. So maybe that says something, but like, I didn't come into it being like, I'm going to see red green being trash. I kind of was still figuring it out, but there is no color pair that my opponent plays and I go, okay, well, they don't know what's going on, or, I have an easy win here or something like that, which is great.
I agree. I think that I have liked drafting blue a lot because it has, at least in the first couple of days, seemed like my record with it was really, really good. It's actually it's balanced a little bit more now, but I feel like you can take anything. Like if we look at this last pack, this Kraken pack, it had a bunch of themed cards. Like it had like Titus, and it had like the Freya Crescent, and even the Gardener and Fire Magic. All those point specifically towards different decks, but all of them seem like totally viable decks. I don't see a strong reason why you don't need to, like you needed to avoid any of those things.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a strategy. It's sort of what I fell into. But what I've done in the early stages here, Luis, is I haven't been drafting white. It's the least attractive color to me, just from like a gameplay perspective and kind of what kind of decks I like to build. So that's part of it. But also, I feel like it's being overly contested. Like I feel like white dries up a little quicker than the other colors. And I'm like, why am I trying to fight it out for a color that I don't really want to be in, that I like a couple of the decks, but I'm not like super stoked on. And the only real dip that I've done is blue white, and because a bunch of those cards kind of are specific to that color pair. So it is interesting. I've been focusing on the other colors mostly, and that's been working for me too. Another note you have here, lots of good interaction. Holy smokes, there sure is.
Yeah, I mean there is no shortage. It's funny, like for example, like the Claustrophobia in blue, Stuck in Summoner's Sanctum is like pretty good removal. It's not even like one of the best comments. It's just medium. There's just so much there. Like blue is not known for being a removal color. It has like Ice Magic and Syncopate and Stuck in Summoner's Sanctum. Red has Suplex and Thunder Magic are both fantastic. It also had Light of Judgment, the 5-mana one that you don't even really need to get to. Black is like Sephiroth's Intervention and Bane's Betrayal and Corner by Black Mages. Like there is just a lot of ways to mess with your opponent's stuff. And most of the time I found like there aren't that many bombs that are like, this is completely unanswerable. Like there are some, like part of the reason Atroxa is such a good card is you deal with Atroxa and the opponent still has a full hand of new cards ready to beat you with.
Right.
But, you know, if your opponent plays like one of the better cards in the set and you kill it, like what you can do, like you get to continue playing the game, which is nice.
Yeah. And I think that the two things that stand out are the amount that you just described of good removal or interaction, but then also the stuff like the blue, you know, like Ice Magic being good, you know, and actually fitting into a whole bunch of decks and stuff, and being flexible. Like each color kind of gets their own little chunk at the interaction. And, you know, we talk about a whole lot of things that go in to what makes a set great with regards to like, you know, how balanced archetypes are and colors are, how fast the speed of the format is, the build arounds that help keep things like this, like formats going for the long term. That kind of stuff all adds up. But one definitely unsung hero of that is just how good is the removal? Because they can really kind of pop off with the rares if they make the common removal answer most of them. And that can make for an interesting thing, because, you know, if the removal's no good, then the rares completely take over. And if the removal's no good and they don't make the rares or the uncommons very good, it can lead to a little bit of flatness there too. How would you describe the power level of the set so far?
It's high power level. Like the cards are very strong. I also think like synergy is certainly not the only thing. Like for example, when you look at a Grixis deck or a black-red deck that maybe is just playing kind of more basic, like I'm going to remove all your stuff and win with whatever. That's not really a synergy deck so much, but the synergy is real. Like the black-green deck's getting a little extra mileage out of its self-mill cards by having some flashback, by having all creatures for, you know, all the graveyard effects that care about that, or like obviously the blue-white artifacts deck. Like all these things do matter, and I have found that the person who's getting a little bit more out of their cards tends to do better. But you know, I would say like if synergy sets go from like 1 to 10, 1 being a core set with just no synergy, every card is exactly as good as just the card is printed, like one of the old core sets before they really knew how to design cards or themes. And 10 is like a set where every single card in the set is a build around. This is closer to like maybe a 4 or a 5. Like there are definitely some theme decks that you have to go pretty hard on, but there's also some decks like the town deck isn't really a synergy deck. It's just a deck full of good cards.
So kind of funny, but Luis and I both wrote articles this week, and we overlapped some of what we wrote about. So we figured we'd talk about the overlap decks and then the ones that didn't as well, because these are some of the archetypes that really stood out to us in the early stages. And the one that we both hit first was blue-red. Yeah.
Because, when he talked in the set review, I think a lot of people were skeptical, like, are they really going to make blue-red 4-mana spells viable? This is kind of the opposite of how blue-red decks have worked before, where instead of trying to play 3 spells in the same turn for your prowess creature, you're trying to play like 1 big spell a turn. But it turns out, as with anything, if the incentives are there, it works out. And it turns out the payoffs are good enough, and the spells that cost 4 or more are also good enough. And the combination, unsurprisingly, is good enough. Where really what you're looking to do, it's a very easy deck to draft, which is kind of nice too. You want to have cards that pay you for playing expensive cards. We're talking cards like Sahagin and the Emperor Palamecia and Shantoto. And then you want spells that cost 4 or more.
Yeah.
And that's basically it. Like, yes, obviously you're playing other cards as well in your deck, but it's a pretty straightforward deck in that regard.
It is. The interesting thing, the 2 things that popped out to me right in the article and kind of diving deep on the deck were, everything you said is true. That's the basics. That's what you need to be able to do to make the deck work. So then the question is, well, which spells do you want to cast that cost 4 or more, right? Because, this could be a very fragile strategy if you try to put out 1 payoff and then cast a bunch of things that cost 4 mana and then they just kill the payoff and you're just stuck with whatever's left over. A lot of times when we think about these blue-red decks, it's a lot of air. Right? We're talking about like cards that cycle, have a mediocre or minor effect on the board, but get you a card back, cantrip, stuff like that, to try to trigger these things that you have going. But that's not the case here. The spells that you use to support those payoffs are actually just real spells that you would want to cast anyway. And you only need to just nudge your direction a little bit further over there. Like Thunder Magic versus Suplex is a good example, where Suplex, has applications that Thunder Magic doesn't, but Thunder Magic's more flexible, but it also can just cost 4 mana. And so that puts it, firmly ahead in that pick order between those 2 cards for the blue-red deck, for example.
Yeah. Ice Magic and Thunder Magic, fantastic in this deck. Cast them for 1 or 2 in a pinch, but most frequently just casting it for that 4 mode and triggering your thing. So it's not really an aggro deck or a control deck. It can kind of play as both, but a common thing will be like play a Sahagin, cast a combat tutorial, cast a 4-mana spell, you're getting some damage in, but you're just kind of killing their stuff and then eventually killing them. Or you can play Emperor into Shantoto and then just 2 spells later they're dead. Right. So like there are definitely ways to approach it. You want to make sure you have a critical mass of 4-mana spells, and the way to do that without being overly clunky is kind of, as you mentioned, the flexible spells. Syncopate also counts here too, where you can play it on turn 2, but also it does certainly trigger your stuff when you overpay for it later. And you want the payoffs. Like the payoffs and the removal spells are kind of how I get into this deck. So when I'm looking at the early pack, obviously like a Shantoto or Emperor is a great way to do it. Or I'm happy to first pick a Thunder Magic and then go from there. And then you pick up Thunder Magic, you pick up Ice Magic, and then you're like, okay, and then 4th or 5th pick, you get a reason to be in specifically blue-red, like a late Sahagin, which is that card's great, by the way. I think that card is quite strong. It
has overperformed relative to how I thought it would, for sure. But again, I think that's partially because this deck has as well. What other key commons are there?
So there's the commons that are good, like in every deck, like Dragoon's Wyvern, Combat Tutorial, Suplex. They don't fall into the theme, but they're good cards. You should definitely play these cards. In order to make sure you have enough spells, Retrieve the Esper and Dreams of Laguna definitely work. Laughing Mad is a card you can play if you're short on spells, but is not a card I'm like excited to play. Yeah,
the ones that I look for the most are the ones that either can be creatures or sub in as creature spots, but also cost 4. So like one I had on my article as a key was called the Mountain Chocobo. Like that one, that one ticks a lot of boxes for a deck like this because it is a creature, but it produces a creature, but it is a 4-mana spell. And also the mountain goes a long way because this deck does have a significant amount of flashback. Like it uses up its mana over and over again. So continually hitting land drops even after turn 4, turn 5. I
love Call the Mountain Chocobo. It's, I think, a fantastic card in this deck, fantastic card in Grixis, great in black-red. Really, the only deck where it's not at its peak is like red-white, and it's still totally fine there. It's a playable, but it is really, really good in these decks. In fact, the biggest problem I have with that card is I'll play like a 3-mountain Grixis deck and run out of mountains to get, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Yeah, that's a personal problem you'll have to deal with. And then I also am not above playing what is the sword called? The 4/2?
Oh, Warrior Sword.
Warrior Sword. You know, I'll play one of those too. Like that's another one that is a non-creature spell that costs 4, but is actually a creature, right? It produces a creature on the board.
Yeah, and that part's nice too.
Yeah, and that just means that this deck gets to play, like, basically you get to free roll the upside because there's enough cards that are admittedly slightly below the curve on their own, but still like Warrior Sword, you know, just straight up on its own, it's not really an exciting common to put into your deck. But if you're getting any of these payoffs like Sahagin and these other things, it's easy to include these. And so now you're like, so I get to play, you know, creatures, air quotes, removal, and payoffs just for casting these spells. Yeah. And that's the deck. So it takes away that super risky part of it where you have the kind of glass cannon thing going in the versions of this deck prior. Grixis.
This is an interesting one. So this is not like a supported archetype in the sense that it's not like a headliner like, hey, this is what these 3 colors are supposed to do. But I kind of fell into this after a couple blue-red starts that kind of didn't materialize. I didn't get like the actual payoffs. And the way I construct Grixis decks is you want card removal. That's like uncapped. You want as many removal spells as you can. 10 removal spells, 12 removal spells. Great. You want, in removal, I count like counter spells and bounds, interaction, basically, ways to deal with their stuff. You want card draw. You want like solid 4 or 5, sometimes more card draw if the good ones are on deck. And that includes Travel to Overworld, a card which I think is great. That's the 7 mana draw 4, but it's cheaper for each town. And the reason I think it's great here is because you do want towns in order to play 3 colors of cards. And sometimes you are just straight up Grixis, like not, oh, I'm playing like blue, red, splash, black. I'm just playing blue cards, red cards, and black cards, and I have early plays in all 3 colors. To do that, you want like 5 to 7 towns, and the more the merrier. Like you end up in a spot where you can cast these spells, and the fact that you have tap lands is made up for it by the fact that you have Thunder Magic and Suplex and Sleep Magic and all these other like cheap interaction cards where you can go tap land into bolt your thing, that sort of thing. And then you end up in a spot where you're basically able to control the game and you're able to kill all their stuff, cast some card draw spells, and win with kind of whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like the dream to me. So is there any weakness here? You said the mana's pretty good if you get the town, so that's not a big concern?
Well, I mean, that is a weakness in the sense that if you don't get the right towns, then your mana will be bad.
Okay.
And you do have to kind of watch out for that. So it's not just completely free, and you will still lose games based on it, as opposed to being in a 2-color deck where you're not that likely to lose games to your mana. So, you know, you do have to keep all those things in mind. But at the end, you get access to 3 colors worth of cards, which is pretty huge because, you know, that means your card quality will be higher on average. You get tons of good removal, which is awesome. Like I have found that is it just totally works to end up killing all their stuff. Like the interaction is just really great.
It is so good in that color trio. Do you play cornered by black mages in the deck?
Yeah, so that's one I typically don't. Like, it's not impossible to consider it, of course, but I have found that cornered by black mages is a little difficult casting cost wise because you're not itching for double color cards. And if you have double color cards, you want them to be blue because that's like kind of the main color that sits in between, even though you do end up all 3 colors. But Corner by Mages, in theory, is a totally fine card. It's mostly just, can you reliably cast this? Because Edicts are one where if you don't cast it on the turn where you want to cast it, it could be really bad.
They go downhill quickly.
You do need to actually do that. But, I mean, you can just draft, like, you get a bunch of Grixis lands, because there's obviously the 3 Grixis towns. There's also the common town, the Crossroads town that's any color, and uncommon town, and a rare town. So there's, like, a lot of different ways to fix your mana. And you can just really grind your opponents out. It's really fun. I love getting to do that.
Do you play the artifact, whatever, the one that gets a land, what is it, globe or world
map?
Yeah.
I typically don't. I think that card has use cases, and the main use case I have for world map is in a dedicated, like, either artifact deck that wants to up its artifact count, or a black mage deck that really wants to up its spell density. And world map can kind of be a fake land that also triggers all your stuff when you play like 15 land plus one of these, or 16 land plus one of these. But I don't typically play that in the Grixis deck. I at least would hope not to.
Your fixing's better than that. And then last question is, You said that blue tends to be the primary color if you had to pick one. Is there a secondary color that is most common? Like, is this blue black with a little bit of red, or is it blue red with a little black, or is it everything? Or
it could be either one. It could it can be blue red splash black, or it can be blue black splash red. Like that's all fine.
Okay, this deck looks sweet. I'm sure I think I've had decks that had the Grixis colors, but then plus another color, but not just straight up Grixis. But I mean, all the tools are here, right? I mean, this is a classic limited control deck. It has access to everything that you need. Is the biggest concern the fixing? Is that the thing that, like, when you're drafting it, that you want to make sure that you shore up?
You really do need cheap interaction. If it's expensive, it's going to be just too clunky. Like that is something you have to really be watch out for in the deck. Okay.
And then so you wrote about that one in your article. I didn't, but then the other one that we did overlap on was, well, I'm curious to see your take on it, but at least partially Sultai Towns. I wrote about that too. I have drafted it a fair bit, and I've been pretty impressed by it. It's a real deck. Like, I have won with it for sure. I've got 2 trophies with Sultai. I just try not to I put it at the end of my article as kind of I have my eye on this, but I'm not sure if it's real type thing. Cause remember, my article is like a PT, like a primer for the draft at the PT kind of thing. So I felt confident about the blue, white, and blue, red sections, about those are real decks that, I know if they come together that they'll be solid. But what's your confidence level on Sultai, just before we get into the details of it?
I think it's great. Like, it's kind of like two to three different decks. There's straight black green, which is going to be a little more graveyard focused. There's blue green, which is certainly just like ramping it up and trying to play more like town stuff, maybe more colors, though these can overlap. And there's just straight up Sultai good stuff, and they all play like pretty similarly, but they have some relevant differences.
Okay, so how does it work? How do you get into it? What's the reason?
So I think the main way to get into this deck is you open a good bomb. Like, you open an Atraxa, you open an Arduin, or the 8-mana black creature that exiles stuff from the graveyard. Like, you open one of those things.
Sin
is another one. Yeah,
dope. Yeah, card's really good.
Yeah, Sin is a fantastic card. And once you do that, then you have a very good reason to be in this deck. And then you want black removal, green ramp, blue kind of card draw / interaction. That's kind of that's about where you end up on these things.
Okay. One big picture question before the more detailed stuff is I pitched it as Sultai, but the truth is that I have been drafting a lot of Sultai with a splash, I guess you could say, for red if I got a bomb, or white if I got something like that, just to touch, like, if there was something else really good. But the core of the deck was Sultai. Has that been your experience too, or do you keep it just to those 3 colors?
If you end up with like a really fantastic red card, you're totally allowed to take it and play a little bit of red. Like Joshua Phoenix is dominant, or something just that's very strong. But most of the time, I have just been in Sultai. I haven't really seen a very strong reason to go into another color.
And what are the cards that you look for, the commons?
Besides the removal spells, the towns are pretty high picks as well, because you really do need to be able to cast your spells. And I do like that most of the blue cards are pretty flexible. So like cards like Syncopate, Ice Magic, Stuck in Summoner Sanctum are all totally fine. But if you have black removal, that does tend to be better. I really do like some like the land cyclers, like the Balam T-Rexor and Marlborough are pretty good. Ice Flawn's a little bit worse than those two. The green fixing like Town Greeter is great. I don't like the Wanderings that much. Prishi's Wanderings, the 3-mana one. Mm-hmm. I found that that card's okay, but it's not a card I'm going to prioritize. I want the 2-mana ramp. So, like the Gardener or
Farseek if you get lucky.
Farseek if you're lucky, or like Town Greeter, which is a 2-mana play. I know that doesn't like specifically ramp you. Or I want like the 4-mana ramp, like the Seek the Horizons or the Ring of the Lucy that taps for 2 colorless. Like those are the things I'm looking for. I'm not really looking for 3-mana ramp spells all that much.
Yeah. And the easiest part is finding the finishers, the top end stuff. Like you'll know they're usually gold and they're bombs and they're awesome. That part's pretty easy. I think the things to consider with the deck are, what does your mana fixing look like? One interesting thing is that the towns deck, if you look at the payoffs, like there's not actually that many that are town specific. It's basically the card draw spell is kind of the main thing. But there are a lot of payoffs for being in 3 colors and for ramping your mana and for having big mana and that type of stuff. So you know, when I kept feeling like I was drafting the towns deck when I drafted it, but I realized after that the fact that they were towns was largely incidental. It was more just that I had access to ramp and color fixing and big stuff and good cheap removal. And yes, you know, some card draw, you know, from the, what is it called? Over the world.
Travel over a world.
Through the woods to whatever value town we go. And that's a nice card. I agree. But yeah, but you know, card draw isn't, to me, I don't look at card draw as being like at a premium. Like there's tons of good card draw in the set, and I feel like I can pick that up kind of whenever I want. So it's more about, to me, fixing rather than like town specific stuff. It's just as far as payoffs go. But yeah, and then otherwise it just plays like, I mean, that's my favorite type of deck, right? A generally controlling deck that has some ramp, 3 colors, maybe a 1 extra, and it has some really powerful inevitability in the late game. And this deck checks literally all those boxes. It is definitely my favorite deck in the early stages. And like I said, I've actually been winning it with it too. So
it's a lot of fun. If you get a good towns deck that has like a good mix of like, you've got some acceleration, you've got a couple bombs, or like pseudo bombs like Colosseum Behemoth, right? The 7 mana,
that
7/7 disenchant or draw a card. Like, yeah, that card isn't like, I'm going to first pick this, definitely go towns. But once you're in the deck, it's a great card to pick up. You have some of those. You have some removal. You have some card draw. You have some lands. It's a really good deck. If it's got good early plays and cannot die to aggro, like the high end is really there.
Yeah. And by the way, this is the pure value deck of the format too. I mean, it's so much fun to just start, you know, overwhelming your opponent with card advantage and spot removal and stuff. Last one that we wanted to talk about, which is the one I wrote about, that didn't make it into Luis's article, was blue-white artifacts. I felt like blue-white artifacts and blue-red were the most straightforward, easy to see decks that also check the box on being good. And so that's why I chose to write about them. But similar to what Luis said about blue-red, it's pretty straightforward. Blue-white gives you a 2-color deck that says, I care about artifacts. And the cool part about that is that there are enough payoffs at common and uncommon that they come up. And then the other cool thing is that there are some overlap cards that are artifacts, but the payoff ones, they're pretty much just reserved for blue-white, you know? So stuff like, you know, good cards at common would be cards like White Orosite, White Mage's Staff, which is really overperformed. But I mean, when you look at it, you're like, well, yeah, right. It's a 2-drop that's also an artifact, basically. So that's pretty good. Magitek Infantry that we talked about has been really good. And then you get cards like Gala Cat, which is like fine, but also only for this deck. Like nobody else wants it. So if you want 3 Gala Cats to go in your heavy artifact deck, you're going to get it. And that card's pretty good. Like it you know, it's a C+ or whatever in that deck. And for everybody else, it's a D- or something like that. Magitek Infantry, we should talk about that one, Luis. It has been really good.
I love Magitek Infantry. Yeah. It's a fantastic card.
It really is. You know, we talked about it in the set review, of course, but when you play it, you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, I get it. You know, it's like you can leave up mana, you can end step it. Like the timing on it works a little bit better. And it really is just an army in a can. I mean, it just, for 1 mana investment, you know, to kick off the festivities, you know, I often find myself just really hoping that like the 4th one doesn't come out of their deck. You know, I'm just like, right. Oh my God, the 3rd one was bad enough. Are they seriously doing it again? And then they do, and you're like, oh my God, how did you get 4? And you just feel like wronged somehow because they're sitting there, you know, because the way the play pattern works is that they start going off with the infantry and they build enough of an annoying board that you have to deal with it. And then you look and they have 5 freaking spells in their hand. You know, because they haven't missed a land drop and all they've done is dump their mana into the infantry. And now they're sitting there staring at you, you know, with a really nice backup plan of all the rest of their deck. So that's been really good for sure. Interestingly, there's an overlap with blue-red here in that you get the blue spells that are just good, and you just get to play them. You get to play Dragoon's Wyvern. Like, it doesn't have much to do with the thing. It doesn't make any artifacts.
Much to do with anything. It's just good.
It's just really good. Combat Tutorial, also really nice. I mean, that card's just been really good. It doesn't take much to make divination, back right into playable.
Some might say it's already perfect, actually.
Some might. And combat tutorial really does help with both blue-red and blue-white, because ultimately these are decks that are turning creatures sideways. And, if anything, blue-white is even a little bit more towards the aggressive end of the spectrum. It's not a hyper aggressive deck or anything. I would call it a mid-range deck, but if I had to pick which way it was leaning, it was on the lower curve, turn creature sideways side rather than the, do big stuff late in the game side. So combat tutorial is really nice in the mid game to reload and also keep the attacks flowing. And then ice magic that we've talked about a lot too, is a similar type of thing. As far as, how you get in the deck, I've gotten in the deck by drafting blue, generically good blue cards, and then kind of backing into the white stuff like, it's a fourth pick Magitek Infantry. I haven't seen one yet. It's pack one still. Like, I'll pick one up and try to get on the train. Those type of scenarios pop up somewhat frequently. And then it's easy. I mean, it really is. This is one of those kind of handhold archetypes in the format where there's nothing secret. It really does just tell you like, hey, look, this says when an artifact enters, something good happens. This has affinity for artifacts. It's like, you don't have to outthink yourself on that. You can just draft the solid cards in these two colors and then augment them with the Artifact Matters cards. And then it turns out that deck does pretty well. It tends to win.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. Really the only kind of like tricks or stuff like playing world map as a way to get an additional artifact in, or just trying your hardest to make sure not to play like non-artifacts in your deck. It sounds dumb, but like that is actually what you just need to do.
You do need to get to critical mass. All right, few cards that we can talk about here. If we haven't got to them yet, Fire Magic. Good.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight, I think people are starting to get it, but it is, I consider Fire Magic a premium card. It is a very good card.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I'm glad we had that discussion from the Crack-a-Pack, because like I said, my early interactions with it have been very hit or a little bit miss, but it sounds like in the right deck, it's much, much more towards the hit side. Magitek Infantry we just talked about. The Crystal's Chosen, which card is that?
That's the 5 white, make 4 heroes and then put a counter on that.
Counters.
This has just continuously been great. Like I would take this card highly and want to play it in my white decks.
And that's an uncommon, right?
Yeah, I've always found myself wanting one. It's expensive, but it's a little bit like the Behemoth. The green one is just, it's a good 7 mana play. Like you're not unhappy to play this card.
Mm-hmm. What about Sahagin or Sahagin or however we say it?
Yeah, that was just to highlight that like this card looks just okay, but it's actually like one of the top blue commons. So
it's so funny.
Keep that in mind.
It totally looks like exactly the throwaway payoff that we always get and never want, and it's just performing quite well. The thing is that it does pick up +1/+1 counters rather than temporary buffs, and when you start off with that and then you get to curve into normal stuff and it just gets big, that's actually pretty decent. Travel to Overworld.
Card, and I want to note that you don't have to be the Towns deck to make this good. If it costs 5 mana, it's good. If it costs 6 mana, sometimes that's still fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like
it's a lot of cards.
You basically just want, once you cast this, and if you haven't lost the game afterwards, you're usually going to win the game.
Evil Reawakened. Oh man, I need to know these cards. Which one's that?
4 and a black sorcery. Put a creature back from your graveyard into play with 2 counters on it.
With the counters, yeah.
I just take this card now. Like
same.
Black red is like the one place where I don't really like it, but green black, black white, blue black, red black's the one place I don't like it. The other 4 color or 3 color combinations are great. Like you just end up getting back more than 5 mana's worth of card without really trying, especially with like the land cycles. Like getting back taking a nice hit from a smooth Marlboro on turn 5 like sounds like it's a pretty good play. And sometimes you just self-mill your Sin or your Arden and just win the game very easily.
Yeah, we talked about how important the 2+1/+1 counters are for a card like that, and they are just game changing. Like, just look at the next deck that you play and fan out the creatures and tell me if that was 2 power and 2 toughness bigger, how you'd feel about it. And it's just like, there aren't bad creatures anymore. It changes things.
Those 2 counters really do make a difference. Obviously, if you get this card early enough, I've had some sick decks. Like I had a Grixis deck that had 4 ways to discard and 2 of the like revelations, the 2 mana, look at the top 3, put one in your hand, the rest in your graveyard. And Evil Reawaken got back Arden sometimes, the 5 black 4/4 that reanimates demons. I've had it in black green with self mill, and that's just fantastic there. It's a good card. I would advise taking it early.
I agree. Heck dies.
That's the one of the black 1/1. They discard a card. I actually want to say that this card is worse than it has been in previous incarnations. Virus Beetle and its ilk always looked great. Ravenous Rats, the OG. I think Heck dies is okay. But I have started to not prioritize it outside of like black-white or a black-green deck that has like specific uses for it. Like putting it in your black-blue deck, I just haven't found to be that great, especially since there's so much flashback and graveyard stuff that making them discard isn't as much as good as it used to be.
It has felt a little less impactful, but man, I can't not play it.
I'm not saying you shouldn't play this card, but this card was frequently one of the best black commons, and I don't view it that way right now.
Okay. What about Call the Mountain Chocobo? Our boy.
It's a great card. It just lets you play like these really good long games where, I mean, look, this card's a 4-for-1. You cast it, you get a 2/2 in a land. You flash it back, you get another 2/2 in a land. Granted, it costs a lot of time, and like these are 2/2s, but the attack is 3/2s.
It's a 10 mana 4-for-1. What more do you want?
Yeah, I mean, it gets on the board. I think Call the Mountain Chocobo was great, and I have used this to cast 6-drops in a lot of different decks.
It really is. I mean, 4-for-1 aside, it is a 2-for-1 for 4 mana, and they're both legit. Like that's an actual card in your hand, an actual thing on the board. Blitzball. This one's funny, man. We kind of were like, well, how are you ever going to trigger this? And it's like, no, I've already done the second mode like 2 or 3 times.
Done it many times. Look, it turns out a 3-mana rock that taps for any color is just so close to being playable on its own front that adding this, sometimes you get to cash in for 2 cards, I think is enough. Look, I'm not putting this card in decks that don't want a 3-mana rock. But in your Towns deck or in your Grixis deck that maybe needs a little help with the colors, it's been totally fine. In your artifact decks as an additional artifact, and that deck frequently has like cheap white legends, with Victor Steinberg or whatever. And your opponent is rarely going to like chump to stop you from doing this. So you do get to do it a decent amount of the time, I've found.
Yeah, I have too. It's really funny because I think I would have set the over-under at like maybe 1 time in the format, even with a bunch of legends, but it's like, nah, it actually happens kind of all the time. What about Poo Poo UFO? Have you played? I haven't played it yet.
It's a 2-mana 0/4 flyer. So first of all, it's a 2-mana 0/4 flyer. It can block pretty well. So it's already like gaining you a little bit of life there. Tap to put a land into play is really nice with card draw. Casting this into combat tutorial, like the game is just over. You have a 1/5, you have a showstopper, you're going to have 6 lands in play on turn 4. The game is over. And when you activate this and attack for 4 or 5 in the air, it's pretty great. Plus, I've had this happen multiple times on Arena. People just think it's an 0/4 and they just attack their Wyvern's Dragoon into it. You're like, okay, block, make it a 1/4. And it's like, they usually pause for a second, and then you can see them mousing over the card, and they're like, oh, yeah, it actually has an ability too. So I like this in Grixis and in Towns. I've been happy with it in both. I would not play it outside of those really, or especially if you don't have a lot of Towns. But if you have Towns and a high curve and card draw, yeah, I think this card actually is a good card.
Have you been on Blazing Bomb? That's the red 1/1, and if you cast a non-creature 4 or more, it gets a counter, and you can tap it and sack it to do damage equal to its power to a creature at sorcery speed.
I've liked it in Grixis, where I just want almost any cheap interaction. The red-blue deck, I think it is fine there. You don't always play it, but it's solid. I have not wanted to play it in black-red, and I haven't really drafted much red-white.
Okay. Yeah. And then, we did mention it briefly, but the green-red landfall deck seems to be the one that's performing the worst. How have you been, though, on green-white chocobos?
I've played against it more than I've played with it. I had one green-white deck, and it was fine. It was just creatures, combat tricks, and it's pretty ABC. It can go pretty nuts with the chocobos. It's by far the best deck at how to raise a chocobo. The 2-mana enchantment that if you have 4 of them, it turns into a black chocobo. Yeah. That's a pretty real card. Also, Fat Chocobo is a pushed card.
It is
5 mana for a 4/4 plus a 3/2 plus trample. And I have found, I don't know about you, but I have found the 4-chapter saga creatures, you have to just kill them. You can't usually just take a bunch of hits. Yeah. The 3-chapter ones, sure. Sometimes you're just like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to eat it, and that's fine. The 4-chapter ones, it's like, wait, you're going to take 8 damage off this plus all the other things? Yeah, okay. I mean, that's just not a good strategy, I don't think.
Yeah, no, we had we predicted that the 3-mana ones, the 3-chapter ones, you could treat as not a creature, and the other ones you had to just treat as a creature, and that has played out that way, especially ones that augment the rest of your board as they go. There was one other card I wanted to ask you about. Oh man, I forgot what it was now. Shoot. Well, I'll have to remember it for next week because I can't remember what it was. Oh, I know. Well, this is a different one, but where have you come down on Cactuar, the green 3/3 trample, but at the beginning of your end step, if this creature didn't enter the battlefield this turn, then you bounce it back to your hand?
Never had it in my deck. Every time I played against it, it's been awful.
Yeah, every time. I feel the same way. Okay, good. I'm just going to let that one sit. Okay, let's call it a show there, Luis. Great stuff. Overall, I'm really liking the format so far. I have my quibbles with it, with some of the, it's a little uncomfortable for old school Magic players to enter this new phase where it's like Final Fantasy. And then, we keep making the joke, oh, it's going to be SpongeBob and, these kind of other IPs. But I got to say, on week 1, the things that are standing out to me about this set have nothing to do with Final Fantasy, except for maybe the names are a little weird, but whatever. I don't really care about that. The things that are standing out are just Magic-y stuff, like A, the format's been cool. B, it feels flat and that, power level wise, which is really good and a good potential sign. And C, the complexity feels high. The one thing I would say in relation to this being a Final Fantasy set is like, good luck sometimes Magic players who are jumping in because they like Final Fantasy. Holy crap. There are so many words on these cards. Like, I cannot imagine being like, oh yeah, I played Magic 15 years ago. Like, I'll check it out again. And you come into this set and it's just like, you read 7 paragraphs and then it's like, now flip the card over. And it's like, okay, this set, those are the things that are standing out to me. And trust me, they may sound like complaints, but they're not. I'm perfectly happy to have Magic gripes about this set. I would have been really frustrated, I think, if it was, Final Fantasy related stuff that they bent over backwards for, did something weird. Nah, if I didn't know anything about Final Fantasy and you just presented this to me as the next set, and said, oh, it's this plane called whatever, and here's all this stuff going on, I'd be like, wow, this is complicated. Like they really kind of bit off a lot with the lore here, and the spellings are kind of weird, but I would buy that this is just a straight up Magic set. So yeah, I'm relieved about that, to be honest with you, because now I'm like, well, if they can handle this well, I guess the question becomes, is Final Fantasy Magic-y fantasy, traditional fantasy related enough so that it can just sort of shoe in, but like Marvel wouldn't be? Or is it just that they kind of figured out how to do this,
I think Marvel's still going to feel pretty different, though. Maybe less so for us because we're going to play online and it's just not going to be Marvel. It's going to be whatever that. Oh God, that's
I still can't believe that.
But I do think Final Fantasy mostly lends itself to, and part of it is Magic's done some good world building. Like, look at a card like Shinra Reinforcements or Aerith Rescue Mission, right? Because Final Fantasy VII was pretty technological. Like, it had a lot of like high tech stuff, nuclear reactors and whatnot. Those still fit because Magic has done like steampunk stuff or Neon Dynasty stuff like that, where those just still feel like Magic cards, and maybe they would have feel less like Magic cards if we hadn't seen those sets, but we have, and now it doesn't seem particularly weird to see lasers and rockets and guys in tactical armor or whatever.
Yeah,
and that I think is because Magic's expanded fairly well. So that's good on Magic to do that and can absorb something like Final Fantasy with that and still feel like Magic, which is I think kind of the dream. That's the best case for Universes Beyond. And yeah, I found the set to be totally fine. Like obviously there's some slightly weird stuff going on, but nothing that detracts really from my enjoyment of the set, which I am enjoying.
Same. All right. On that note, let's call it a show. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV pretty much everywhere. You can find everything related to the podcast at lrcast.com. You can also, we also want to thank our sponsor, Ultimate Guard, for supporting the show. Make sure you check out ultimateguard.com to see all their products, and our supporters on Patreon. Thank you, Patreon supporters. We really do appreciate it. It means the world to us that you continue to support us over on Patreon. We'll have more takes, and we'll also have a PT behind us by the time we record next week, Luis, and we'll probably know everything there is about the format, be over it, and be ready to move on to the next thing. That's how it works now. 2 week duration for these formats. And with that, we'll see you next week.
I have a thought exercise for you. So you know the card Call the Mountain Chocobo?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways you could read this. And I got to give credit to Dom Harvey for posting this on our team forum. I thought it was really funny. Are you going to call the mountain Chocobo? You're saying Chocobo is the name of the mountain? Mm-hmm. Are you saying call the mountain, Chocobo? Hey, Chocobo, can you go call the mountain for me? Are we calling the mountain Chocobo? Well, that's probably what it is, given the lack of other punctuation. Or is it call, that's the name, call the mountain Chocobo? So there's just a lot of ways you could read this. And given how many times I've cast it, I've really pondered all of them.
You think it's a legendary Chocobo named Call?
It's possible.
I mean, like that.
That's my current front runner. It's a legendary mountain Chocobo named Call, and it's Call the mountain Chocobo. But there's a lot of ways to interpret this. All of them good, because this is a fantastic card.